Thanks for joining us. A big sigh of relief for thousands of travelers. It's business as usual today for Air Canada after it struck a tentative deal with the pilots union. Tyler Cheese has our top story.
You know, it was stressful because I was like finishing a lot of stuff for work before I leave. It was stressful, very stressful.
Travelers at Pearson Airport say they were worried and scrambling to make alternative plans in the days leading up to a possible Air Canada strike.
I planned ahead, so I booked another flight on a different airline on the way home, but I'm glad Air Canada settled.
I have booked on Air Canada next weekend and the weekend after as well, so it's a big relief.
In a last-minute move, Air Canada and the union representing 5,400 pilots announced a tentative deal. The agreement averted a work stoppage that likely would have started on Wednesday, but the airline had previously warned that flight cancellations would have started as of Sunday.
I think we ended up with a good agreement. I think the pilots got a significant pay raise. I think Air Canada had to address that pay differential and a catch-up from the previous contracts quickly.
The Air Canada Airline Pilots Association says the deal includes $1.9 billion for the pilots over a 4-year period. The previous deal, made a decade ago, included raises of only 2% a year. But now,
a 42% increase over 4 years in their wages, with 26% in the first year. You know, that's nothing to turn down. It's certainly something that shows how much Air Canada wanted to avoid a strike and how much Air Canada wanted to signal how it valued its pilots.
And for those wondering how that might affect ticket prices,
it is not going to happen. It's going to be whatever the market decides the price is going to be for the flight.
Now that a tentative agreement has been reached, the union's negotiating team will spend the next few weeks presenting the deal to its members. Then they'll vote on whether or not to ratify.
Given what we've seen so far, I can't imagine that either side would turn down a tentative agreement and start from scratch.
And in the meantime, it's business as usual at Pearson and airports across the country. Tyler Cheese, CBC News, Toronto.
Another beautiful day out there. Hopefully you had a chance to enjoy it. What a way to cap off the final weekend of summer. Sophia joining us for our first look at the forecast. Though, Sophia, it sounds like the fog may hang around a little longer.
Shannon, yes, thank you. One more morning on tap for that fog bank, especially into the western edge of Lake Ontario. Into the overnight period, light winds conducive for that fog, 15 degrees with that northwest wind. Now, fog is notoriously hard to forecast, but we really have our eyes Monday, pre-dawn hours around 5 a.m. because that could be the peak for many of you, especially in southern Ontario, to actually see another vantage point of the aurora borealis, the northern lights. We had a strong solar flare that was released by the sun on Saturday. We're seeing it into the pre-dawn hours as a G3, that's the middle of the line severity level. You can see them anywhere north of this yellow line that includes many of you in the GTA and into southwestern Ontario. And the cloud cover forecast looks like it'll hold out anywhere south of Timmins, clear skies, but you really need to be away from any urban light pollution to see that sort of middle of the line severity level. The rain void is also holding up in parts of southern Ontario and really up to northern and eastern Ontario as well. We could be in our longest dry stretch without any rain since February of this year, and it looks like it will keep on coming Monday. Look at the uniform high 20s right across the board with feels like values in the low 30s. It continues for Tuesday with brilliant sunny skies. I'll tell you when the rain returns in the long range.
Okay, see you soon. We're tracking developing news south of the border. Donald Trump is safe after shots rang out near his golf course this afternoon in Florida while he was on the green at the time. Katie Simpson is in Washington with more on what the FBI is calling an attempted assassination, the second so far this campaign.
Donald Trump whisked away by motorcade from what could have been a horrific moment in U.S. history, escaping the line of fire of a would-be gunman police say was laying in wait in the shrubs outside his golf course.
Now, in the bushes where this guy was is a AK-47 style rifle with a scope, 2 backpacks which were hung on the fence that had ceramic tile in them, and a GoPro, which he was going to take pictures of.
Investigators sharing these photos showing the rifle with the scope, the backpacks, and that GoPro camera. Trump was golfing early Sunday afternoon when a member of his Secret Service detail noticed something suspicious.
They have an agent that jumps one hole ahead of time to where the president was at. And he was able to spot this rifle barrel sticking out of the fence and immediately engage that individual, at which time the individual took off.
At least 4 shots were fired by the Secret Service. Amid the commotion, a witness snapped a photo of the suspect fleeing in a getaway vehicle, including the license plate. The vehicle was stopped by highway patrol officers after the tags were fed into the state's license plate reading system. Police say he was arrested without incident. In a fundraising email, Trump said, "I am safe and well. Nothing will slow me down. I will never surrender," calling for unity and peace. Still, it all appears to have been a very close call. Police say the suspect was not very far away from Trump.
Probably between 300 and 500 yards, but with a rifle and a scope like that, that's not a long distance.
Security around Trump has already been ramped up over the past 2 months in the wake of the first assassination attempt, when a gunman fired shots at Trump during a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, grazing his right ear.
What happened?
While more resources are dedicated to keeping Trump safe, he's not getting the highest level of protection.
He's not the sitting president. If he was, we would have had this entire golf course around it. But because he's not, the security is limited to the areas that the Secret Service deems possible.
The suspect in this case has been identified by multiple U.S. news outlets as 58-year-old Ryan Routh from Hawaii. He'd taken an intense interest in the war in Ukraine and had been interviewed by the New York Times a couple of years ago about visiting Ukraine, he said, and trying to generate support for the war effort. In terms of a motive in this case, police have not released any specifics. Katie Simpson, CBC News, Washington.
Closer to home now, voters in the Bay of Quinte head to the polls later this week for a provincial by-election. Now, it's a seat vacated by former Energy and Education Minister Todd Smith last month. Despite this normally being blue country, the Conservative federal MP for the riding says there is no guarantee of a PC win.
I don't know. I guess we're going to see. It's going to be a close one, I think.
7 candidates are vying to become the riding's MPP. Now, the race is expected to be between the Progressive Conservatives, Tyler Alsop, and Liberal candidate Sean Kelly. Both are Belleville City councillors and have connected with residents as local radio hosts. The by-election is set for September 19th. Meantime, 2 federal by-elections are set for tomorrow, one in Winnipeg, the other in Montreal. As JP Tasker shows us, the by-elections come as Parliament returns tomorrow after a tumultuous summer for Justin Trudeau and the Liberals.
Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre is fired up.
Your priority, sir, election?
Priority, axe the tax.
Rallying his caucus before Parliament's return.
Sellout Jagmeet Singh wants you to believe he's a changed man.
And dialing up the pressure on the NDP to try to bring down the government this fall.
Canadians cannot wait. They need to vote now for common sense Conservatives, and Jagmeet Singh needs to vote with us to trigger a carbon tax election now.
His MPs are ready.
Canadians are fed up with the government. It's time for a change.
I hope we get to an election soon.
The Liberals are on shaky ground in this minority parliament.
All bets are off.
The NDP are going it alone and backing out of a deal to push through government legislation. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau may have to work with the Bloc Québécois to get something done.
If and when the phone rings, we answer.
But first, voters will have their say in 2 federal by-elections on Monday. In Winnipeg, a longtime NDP riding could slip away. The Conservatives have picked up support among working-class voters.
This is the kind of riding that if the NDP loses it, there's a lot of ridings like this across the country where the NDP would be under threat.
The Liberals, meanwhile, are trying to hold on to a Montreal seat. It's been theirs for most of the last century. Facing a tough 3-way fight, the party is setting the bar low.
By-elections are particular animals. They are not necessarily the occasion for voters to show up and endorse the government.
Even if the Liberals lose this safe seat, Trudeau says he won't go.
I'm not going anywhere. I've got a fight to lead against people who want to hurt this country.
While Trudeau says he's staying, at least 2 Liberal MPs have said they're looking to leave federal politics. And if Singh comes up short in the Winnipeg by-election, there may be questions about his future too. JP Tasker, CBC News, Ottawa.
The U.S. Coast Guard will hold a public hearing tomorrow about the implosion of the Titan submersible last year. You'll remember all 5 people on board died. It was diving down to the remains of the Titanic when it suffered a catastrophic failure. Sam Sampson has our story.
An American submersible sets off from a Canadian port and implodes in international waters, killing everyone on board.
This is one of the most complex investigations that I've ever been involved with.
The U.S. Coast Guard's 2-week hearing begins Monday. The aim is to find out what led to the tragedy around OceanGate's Titan submersible last June. All passengers were killed, including the private company's CEO, Stockton Rush.
We are going all the way back for the entire operations of OceanGate. And we're looking at the entire safety framework that's in place to oversee these types of operations.
While the U.S. Coast Guard conducts thousands of investigations each year, most are for floating vessels.
It's unusual because it's a submersible, but also because it was in very deep water, almost 1,000 miles to sea from New England. So it made recovery of the evidence very difficult, and that took longer.
But some are not optimistic the hearings will lead to answers. David Concannon, a lawyer who was supposed to be on the vessel that day, declined an interview, but he told me in a text he thinks the hearings are pointless, and the testimony about the search and recovery efforts has no relevance to determining what caused the sub to implode. The Canadian Coast Guard watched a Canadian vessel tow the Titan through the St. John's Harbor for years, the submersible not safety certified to any international standard. Experts say the industry is self-regulated and growing. They hope these hearings can help change that.
They're going to say, have we reached this tipping point now that there's so many of these going on that to protect the public, we need to do a very robust package and bring it to Congress.
Monday's hearings will start with OceanGate's engineering director responsible for design and safety. Sam Sampson, CBC News, Edmonton.
We are turning to some international stories next. Severe flooding continues in Central Europe, and more heavy rain is expected through tomorrow. Places in the Czech Republic are among the worst hit so far. 10,000 people have been evacuated. Power went out to 250,000 homes. In southern Poland, a bridge collapsed and a house was swept away. As you can see, the river running through Vienna was violent. The entire state surrounding the city was declared a disaster area. Flooding is expected to hit Hungary tomorrow. 8 migrants have died attempting to cross the English Channel to Britain. They were in a rubber dinghy when it was driven onto the rocks and split apart. 51 people were rescued. Officials say they were from Eastern Africa, Syria, and Iran. 12 people died in a similar incident on the Channel just back on September 3rd. Recent calm weather, though, has witnessed an increase of attempted crossings. 200 migrants were rescued between Friday and Saturday alone. Welcome back. A pair of Canadian comedy icons are center stage tonight at the Emmy Awards. Eugene and his son Dan Levy hosting the award show for what's known as the biggest night in television. They are the first father-son team to ever host the show, and as fans of Schitt's Creek are well aware, they are no strangers to Emmy success. In 2020, the show won a slew of awards, including acting honors for both Levys and writing and directing awards for Dan. All the red carpet excitement has come to an end as the curtain closes at TIFF for another year. After years of tough luck, this year's festival was pushing for a major comeback. So did it succeed? Here's Brittany Billette.
The buzz and glitz was back in a big way. Industry insiders say after years of setbacks, TIFF seems to be finding its footing.
TIFF is definitely on the road to recovery. It's not quite there yet, but it's certainly more optimistic than it has been in many, many years.
Years of hurdles have plagued the festival since the pandemic in 2020. First, it was lockdowns. Then, as it tried to ramp up again last year, the writer and actor strikes complicated efforts.
I would say that was like a rough second act. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And we're at the end of that. We're starting the third act, and things are looking better.
Film buffs sneaking in their last bit of TIFF are calling the festival a success.
It certainly feels there's more buzz this year than last year, and probably more hits this year compared to last year's.
It's back just as big, if not bigger.
Everything was splendid. I think that they're probably already planning next year's because this year's was so good.
But this critic says TIFF's spot as the film festival of film festivals could be at risk because of steep competition.
Venice has not only got its act together, but it's dominating so many of the major films, but also Telluride is sneaking in a little bit and taking films like Saturday Night, a Reitman film. His name is on the building where TIFF takes place, but this absolutely should have been one of those big splashy Toronto world premieres, and it didn't get it.
This year was also different for another reason. It had a major sponsor switch up after its breakup with Bell. The telecom giant had been its partner since 1995. This summer, Rogers signed on, but the agreement is only for the festival and only for 1 year.
TIFF had the pandemic to deal with, then they had the strike to deal with, they had Bell to deal with. Like in baseball, 3 strikes are out. So they're not out, and I think it's a big comeback. But long term, I think for TIFF to have them long term, they're going to have to show Rogers, here's how you're going to generate money and ROI, because you can't do it in 1 year.
Business experts and critics say TIFF's success is critical for cementing Toronto as a major tourism destination and putting the spotlight on Canadian content and filmmakers, a place to celebrate their art on a world stage. Brittany Billette, CBC News, Toronto.
This is a movie about moments and about joy, and receiving this news is a moment I will certainly never forget.
And that's TIFF CEO Cameron Bailey reading a speech from the life of Chuck writer and director Mike Flanagan after unveiling the movie as the winner of the People's Choice Award today. Now, the movie is adapted from a Stephen King story. Both Flanagan and King are known for horror, but this film is a bit more fluid. The sci-fi flick is a genre bender about 3 chapters in the life of the main character. Meantime, that controversial documentary, Russians at War, will screen at TIFF Bell Lightbox starting on Tuesday. TIFF suspended screenings during the festival, it said, due to threats to public safety. Russians at War shows the invasion of Ukraine from the point of view of Moscow's troops made by a Russian-Canadian filmmaker. Now, the backlash from the Ukrainian community has been strong, calling the film propaganda, which the filmmakers deny. $80 million, the Lotto Max jackpot reaching record new heights. It's the highest draw in Canadian lottery history, and it's up for grabs on Tuesday. The prize will top last week's record of $75 million. OLG says there are 18 additional Max Million prizes worth $1 million each. You have until 10:30 Tuesday night to get tickets. We asked people what they would do with all that money if they win.
Well, so these 2 and my 2 cats and I will, I don't know, I guess we'll, I don't know, we'll probably go to the beach. We'll spend a long time at the beach.
Are you going to give it to this lady here?
Of course.
And it just builds up and builds up. They try to entice you some more. The next thing you know is 79,999 people who didn't win.
Help some people out that need help medically or they're challenged.
The Toronto Waterfront Festival was back at Sugar Beach this weekend. There were all sorts of fun, cultural activities, food, and more. The festival is free to enjoy, but people are encouraged to pay what they can to help keep the event free for years to come. The annual Terry Fox Run taking place across Canada today. In Toronto's High Park, runners, joggers, and walkers all pausing to remember Terry Fox and raise money for cancer research.
What we always like to see is the number of red shirts that are with us. So for those of you who don't know, red shirts are worn by people who are cancer survivors. So every year, cancer research grows by leaps and bounds, and we see more and more people surviving cancer. This is the entire point, and it's such a great thing for people who are raising money to know that their funds are going to such great research and really, truly saving lives.
This was the 44th annual Terry Fox Run. More than $900 million have been raised since 1981, when Fox died just 1 year after his Marathon of Hope. Beautiful day for all those taking part. Sophia is back with yet another stellar forecast for September. Quite the change from a soggy August.
Yes, Shannon, more hot, sunny days to come, and it's been quite the U-turn after the rainiest summer on record. Look at those rainfall totals, and now we're counting the exact opposite. Hot, dry, sunny days. Can you believe we've had almost a week consecutive without a trace of precipitation? We're in running for the other longest stretch we've had so far this year, which was 7 days back in early February. Some of you will see well over a week with this atmospheric setup we have right now. It's called a Rex block, and what it means is a stable ridge of dry and hot high pressure is sandwiched around areas of low pressure with nowhere to go, and we are the recipient and the benefactor of a wonderful temperature anomaly that has extreme heat all the way up to Hudson's Bay and James Bay, while areas like the Sunshine State in California are being plunged into both seasonal conditions. We are in the high 20s, and many there are barely into the mid-teens. You will have this beautiful uniform temperature profile throughout Monday, with the high 20s all the way up into northern Ontario, along with the feels like values into the low to mid 30s. It continues for Tuesday with brilliant bluebird skies to boot, but then things could fall off the rails come Wednesday and Thursday, when this rain void could end. We're watching some favorable development in the tropics with some moisture that could surge northwards, and depending on how far north it inches, some of you could have rain midweek. Now, a few things could happen. This is still pretty far out. Chances are that that system could stay farther to the south. Chances are you could just have cloud cover midweek or really light rain showers throughout Wednesday and Thursday. But for others, yes, that rain void could end midweek and put an end short-term wise to those beautiful feels like values and to the sunshine. Better chance of stability and dry weather in parts of eastern Ontario and up to the north. But really, the end of September looks like it will have more warm summer-like values as well. Shannon.
We love that. Thanks, Sophia. And